Erev Tov, everyone. It's good to see you here in person in Kilat Hakerem, and hopefully Gordon is on his way. And if anyone else comes on Zoom, we'll just admit them. And we'll go to our, I don't know what happened here. We're going to go to our slide thingy, which should be here. Hold on. Here's Abraham, our father. We'll go to our slideshow. And we'll get out of other things. And we'll do a slideshow, and we are about ready to go. Up till now, we've been doing background on the stories of Abraham and how it fits in. And now we're going to begin at least to get into the guts of what this whole story means for the Jews, for the world, and why Abraham becomes such a controversial figure. Okay, this is what we did last time. We finished this last time, so seeing that Lech Lecha begins the story of Abraham. Lech Lecha finishes the story of Abraham. The Lecha, as we're going to see, and words that are similar to Lecha, God is very concerned with you. He's talking to Abraham, Lecha, right? You. And you know, when you're talking to somebody, right, you can often tell, right? Is the person relating, and is the person concerned? Is the person concerned about ani, or is the person concerned about ata? And if it's ata, is it ata, or are you something in it or a you? And this is very much a relationship with a you. And tonight we're going to be doing Abraham and the origins of Israel, which will also be about what does Abraham begin to mean to the people of Israel. Okay. Before we go to an actual text, I'm going to outline the creator. I shouldn't say creator, but the father or the originator of the Jewish people in classic Jewish philosophy, okay? And it goes three ways. You have the simple Jews, okay, with simple faith and a plain, basic way of understanding the Torah. And then you have all of these either more educated or more thoughtful people, okay, who have a deeper view of the Torah. This is going on in general in the Middle Ages. And the result of it is that depending on how you think, you'll posit a different originator of the Jewish people, okay? And it goes like this. Even today, if you ask any regular old Jew with, you know, typical traditional ideas, maybe even someone who doesn't even believe in typical traditional ideas but knows about them, and you ask the person who is the father of the Jewish people, the answer will obviously be Abraham. That's what the title of this course is. Avraham Avinu, Abraham our father. And that's how we start the prayers. Baruch atah Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu, our God and God of the fathers, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov. We have three fathers, and the first of them is Abraham. So he begins this saga of the fathers, of the patriarchs. That is the classic traditional Jewish answer. Okay? Now, I want to make it clear that when I talk about people who are very thoughtful and who are, you know, and question things and whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that their opinions are right. Okay? Okay? And maybe it's a slightly off topic. Okay? But it's always fun to do, and it'll have relevance here as well. Okay? The two greatest thinkers of the Jewish Middle Ages were Maimonides, who everybody's heard of, right? And a much lesser figure who, for various reasons, partially luck, partially other reasons, is far less well known, but some of you have heard about him from me. That was Rabbi Chastai Kreskas. Rabbi Chasdai Kreskas was the greatest philosophical critic of Maimonides. Okay? Maimonides had other critics and other great critics even, but he was the greatest philosophical critic of Maimonides. And if you want to sum up their two views of the world in the most basic way possible, it would be like this. Maimonides says that if you hear that all the common people agree that something is true or correct, what can you be sure of? That they're wrong. Okay? That in a nutshell sums up what Maimonides did his whole life. He's battling all of these ideas that all of the regular people have and trying to show how they're wrong, and you have to understand it better, and you have to understand it with more with more methodology and with reason, that if you understand it better, then, you'll come to a different conclusion. Never accept popular opinion. Okay, that's Maimonides. You see it loud and clear today. In fact, you see it loud and clear in every generation. Okay, nothing new under the sun. Rav Chasdai Kreskas was the exact opposite of Maimonides in this.
What does that last name?
Kreskas, Crescas. Kreskas. He's not so well known to the extent that we don't know how to spell his name. Okay. But there are even a few streets in Israel named after him. Okay? So Rabbi Chasdai Kreskas was the exact opposite of Maimonides. You know Rabbi Chasdai Kreskas, what sums up his whole career? If you hear all of the intellectuals and all of the professionals, wall to wall, they all agree on something, all the educated people, then you can be darn sure that what?
They're wrong.
They're all wrong. Okay? And that's the gutsiest way that Rav Chasdai Kreskas was a response to Maimonides. Okay? And sometimes when I think about this myself just in terms of life, it seems like the only way to live as a Jew is to combine Maimonides and Rav Chasdai Kreskas, right? What happens when the whole world is against you? All the professionals and all the intellectuals and all the common people all agree to be against the Jews, right? So to remain Jewish, what you have to be able to do is to say that they're all wrong.
But the world is flat.
The world is flat. That's a Maimonides example. All the common people think the world is flat. Maimonides knew that the world was round. And so, if you see all the common people know that the world is flat, they must be wrong. But you know what Rav Chasdai Kreskas did to Maimonides? Okay? Rav Chasdai Kreskas said, Maimonides, all the educated people say that beyond the sphere of the stars of the zodiac, there's nothing. That's what Maimonides thought, or at least what the Maimonideans generally thought. Okay, and that was the educated view. And Rav Chasdai Kreskas said, if all of you agree on it, it's probably wrong. Let's just imagine that if we can have one solar system, maybe there's more solar systems. Maybe there's infinite solar systems. Okay, and he was right. And only by being willing to buck the entire intellectual, consensus, was he able to move science forward, which he did. He's one of a small handful of people who helped open the door for Galileo and Copernicus. Okay, but only because he was willing to say that all the intellectuals and all the professionals are idiots. Now, he didn't say they're idiots. That's wrong. No, he didn't say they're idiots. But he said all the intellectuals and all the professionals are far too sure of themselves. Okay, and they're probably all wrong. Okay?
Flat Earth Society.
And even today, there's a flat Earth. So that's also a no galaxy society, right? And there. What does all of this have to do with Abraham? If you ask the simple people, Okay? Who is the starter of the Jewish people, right? The traditional Jews for thousands of years already think that it's Abraham, right? Because he's the father of the Jewish people. Maimonides bucked that consensus. Maimonides said, no. He says anyone with a bit of a head on their shoulders will realize that Abraham, Abraham spoke, first of all, he didn't have a nation, he didn't have a people, right? Just himself and his wife and eventually a son or two, right? And he wasn't the father of a Jewish people, bye done. He was the father of the idea of one God. Abraham is a universal figure according to Maimonides. Anyone who knows that there is one God is a child of Abraham, which means it's not just Israel. It's not just the children of Israel. All monotheistic peoples are the children of Abraham. He didn't consider Christians to be monotheists, but he certainly did consider Muslims to be monotheists. And he even said that the symbol, this is really cool, the symbol in the flesh of monotheism is circumcision. And that's why it joins both the Jews and the Muslims, right? Because these are the two groups that believe in one God. So Maimonides said, look, we can blabber all day if you want about our father Abraham. But if you think about it a little bit, he's not just our father. This also came out in a very, very meaningful way in Maimonides' work. There's a famous letter of Maimonides. We have epistles, letters that Maimonides wrote. And one of them is to Rabbi Ovadia Hager, okay? Ovadia, the righteous proselyte, the convert, okay? This was someone who, if I remember correctly, left Islam and became a Jew in the Middle Ages. Not a very easy decision to make. And he writes to my, what?
Not a very safe.
Maybe it depends what the circumstances were. Was it a safe decision even? And he writes to Maimonides, he says, I've come under the wings of the divine presence. And now that I'm a Jew, he says, when I pray, am I allowed to say, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, our God and God of our fathers, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, because, in fact, they are not my fathers, right? They're not my ancestors. So can I say that prayer? And he didn't ask the question out of nowhere. He asked the question because in the Talmud, there's actually an argument about this, two different opinions. One says that a convert can say this, and the other says a convert cannot say this. And Ovadia wanted to know, so bottom line, can I say this? So Maimonides writes him back this beautiful, beautiful letter, right? How you've come under the wings of the divine presence, and despite suffering and despite all the sacrifices, you've joined the Jewish people. And anyone who does what you have done, right, has the most right to say, God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yeah.
How far back does the practice go of converts taking on parental names of Abraham?
Elisheva, is anyone listening? Even? Hold on. Elisheva is asking, let's see if I have to translate you. It's Gordon. I guess Gordon's listening. So Elisheva is asking, how far back does the custom go that a convert to someone who becomes a Jew is kind of renamed Ben Avraham Avinu, right? The son or the daughter, right, of Abraham, our father. If, for instance, someone who becomes a Jew gets married, that's what's written in the Ketubah,
Get called up
Right.
for an aliyah.
You're called up for an aliyah, exactly. Also, yes, that's the name that traditionally you're called by. So how far back does that go? I do not know the answer. I honestly have never even thought about the question. It's an interesting question. But what I can say is that already in the Talmud, you do have this idea that someone who becomes a Jew, it's like they are reborn. Okay, and so at least the roots of the custom go back to the Talmud. So what do we have so far? We have these simple Jews who think that who is the father of the Jews? Abraham. We have the intellectual Aristotelian scientific Jews who say, like Maimonides, that who is the father of the Jewish people? Not Abraham. Abraham is the father of all the monotheists, right? And if you remember from last week, right? Last week we said it is Moses, okay? Because Moses creates a people that is governed by the idea that idolatry is forbidden and there's one place of worship and you have to worship the one God. It's Moses who created that new reality, not Abraham, okay? So that's the view of the intellectuals. What's the view of the anti-intellectuals? And when I say anti-intellectuals, I don't mean that they have no intellects. I mean that they're going against they're rebelling against the intellectual consensus. They may be very intellectual. They may be even more intellectual than all the self-proclaimed intellectuals, okay? But they're going, in Hebrew you say, neged hazerem. In English, there must be a phrase too, to row against the intellectual tide, okay? To go against the intellectual tide. The intellectual tide is to say that that Moses is the symbol or the father or the creator of the people of Israel. So what did the anti-intellectuals say? In this case, it's not actually Chazdai Kreskas, but it's somebody who Chazdai Kreskas knew about and learned from, and who represents certain ideas that became important for Chazdai Kreskas eventually. And that person was someone you've all heard of, and that was Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, Judah Halevi. Judah Halevi was an anti-intellectual already from before the time of Maimonides. Unlike Kreskas, who was 200 years after Maimonides. And Judah Halevi said no. He said, the intellectuals are wrong. It's not Moses. But the regular Jews, the traditional Jews, are also wrong. It's not Abraham. You know who the father of the Jewish people is? We'll put the patriarchs in one bag, okay? So who is it? Adam. Okay? For Judah Halevi, the father of the Jewish people is Adam. And you may be looking confused. How in the world can Adam and Eve be the parents of the Jewish people? Yeah, aren't they the parents of humanity? Right? Doesn't this kind of go in Maimonides' direction? You know, like Abraham is the father of all the monotheists, so Adam and Eve are the parents of all of humanity. How can you say that Adam and Eve are davka, the creators of the Jewish people? So Judah Halevi held by the following theory. Okay, some of you may have heard this theory. The theory is that within the human race, I'll give you a silly example of it. Okay, you know how in the human race, there are certain things which certain people inherit, but other people don't inherit. For instance, watch my ears. That's genetically inherited. I am very privileged. Some people have the muscles to do that. Yes. Some people have the muscles to do that, and some people don't. In other words, maybe that's not the most important thing in the world. But
pivotal in my life.
What?
This is pivotal in my life.
Why?
My grandfather could do that.
Your grandfather could wiggle his ears.
He challenged me to learn how.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
but I learned
You did?
how I can do it.
Huh?
Oh my goodness.
What are you doing?
Wow.
So you must have had it, apparently. Okay. From what I read, at least, but you can all Google it afterwards. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But from what I read, it's a genetic thing, right? Some people have the muscular ability to do that, and some people don't. I wish I had.
Genetically, I'm a very low pulse rate.
Okay, medically ever. All right. So what is the point? Wiggling ears is a very silly, trivial thing, okay? But Judah Halevi said that within humanity, okay, there is a genetically inherited kisharon in English, talent, okay, or ability, a genetically inherited ability, which he calls, at least in the Hebrew translation, ha'inyan ha'elohi, the divine matter, okay, which apparently is the ability to connect with God, or to phrase it more specifically, the ability to receive prophecy, okay? And he's of the opinion that this is genetically inherited. Some humans inherit it and some don't. Remember how we talked in the first class about the 10 generations from Adam to Noah? Well, Judah Halevi explains, I explained it one way, but Judah Halevi explains it a totally different way. Judah Halevi, Lahavdil Elef Avdalot, it's his explanation, is this, compared to anybody else's, but 10 generations, it only points out one in each generation. And then it says, and he had all kinds of sons and daughters besides that one. Who is that one who leads directly from Adam to Noah? And then another 10 generations, who is the one in each generation that leads directly from Noah to Abraham? That is the single child who inherited from Adam and Eve the Inyan HaElohi. Okay, this human ability to receive prophecy. Okay, most humans cannot, but certain humans can. Then it gets to Abraham, and Abraham initially has 2 sons. Which one of them gets it? Isaac. And then Isaac has 2 sons. Which one of them gets it? Jacob. And then, this is the cool part, Jacob has 12 sons. And which of them gets it? All of them. And from then on, the children of Israel are the people that inherited this ability from Adam and Eve. Okay? This is built on the medieval idea that there are 4 realms of realities, of things in the world. There is inanimate, animate plant, animal and human. Okay, that's Aristotelian. Now, Judah Halevi, when he does this, when he says what I just said, he's positing that there are 5 levels. What are the 5 levels? Inanimate, vegetable, animal, human, and Jew. Okay? The Jews are the most superior thing, okay, that you have in the world. Okay? The human can philosophize according to the medieval scheme, can think and be rational, but only the Jew can receive prophecy. Okay? When are the children of Israel called Jews, you're asking? Okay, that's very ancient. It already goes back to Second Temple times, because that's what you were going to say, right? You have the kingdom of Judah, because it's only one main tribe that returned. Okay? And actually, when the state of Israel was created, there was a whole debate, about what it should be called. And, maybe it should be called Judea, right? Maybe it should be called, I don't know, something else. And the Vatican, by the way, was very much against it being called Israel. Think about it. Yeah, but Marian's asking why. But if you think about what to be a Catholic is, right? What was the claim always of the ancient churches?
The Old Testament was dead.
The Old Testament is dead because God got divorced from the old Israel, right? And he found himself a much better Israel, a new Israel, an Israel in the spirit rather than an Israel in the flesh, right? Not a biological, fleshy Israel, a spiritual Israel made up of believers, the church. That's the true Israel. And so to call a country Israel, that was a big slap in the face for the Vatican. Okay? Tough noogies, says Elisheva. Okay. Elisheva, that was recorded for posterity. What? What? There's the discussion going on here in Midreshet Hakerem, Gordon? Okay. So to get back to the point, the question was, when did the Jews start being called Jews? So the second temple is the kingdom of Judea, and then those who are exiled from the kingdom of Judea or related to the kingdom of Judea, they begin to be called Jews. Okay? But the Jews, they always considered themselves Israel, especially in contradistinction to the church, right? If the church said, we're the real Israel and those Jews, they're not Israel anymore, the Jews said the exact opposite. The Jews said, despite what it looks like, we are still the real Israel, and God still loves us, no matter what you say and no matter what you do, right? And Jews called themselves Israel even in the Middle Ages, okay? I had a class in Oranim. I brought them a poem, a medieval poem written. Hi, how you doing? written by a contemporary of Maimonides, okay? And the poem is about the travails of the, whatever, it's a story that out of the story comes, what a tough situation the Jews are in, okay? And they're living among Arabs. And you know how the poem just naturally calls the Jews and the Arabs? B'nai Yisrael and B'nai Yishmael. It was natural, okay? It's only in modern times that Jews lost the sense of being Israel until this country was created. Like in modern times when Jews were emancipated, they started calling themselves Jews and they less called themselves Israel. But for 2,000 years, being Israel was the foundation of being a Jew. So who is the creator or the founder of the Jewish people? For the anti-intellectuals, it's Adam. For the intellectuals, it's Moses. And for the traditional Jews, it is Abraham, okay? And Chasdai Kreskas, by the way, is what he devoted his life to, was to show that the traditional way of thinking is no less true or no less compelling or no less realistic than all of the intellectual fads, okay? To shore up traditional Jewish belief is a bulwark against the intellectuals, like Maimonides. Okay. So now we can go deep into this question, finally, okay? And turn on the slideshow, which got turned off. It's back to the right page, excellent. Abraham and the origins of Israel. All right. I'm going to introduce you to how to well use certain tools. Maybe I guess I can move this down here. No, I want to be looking at it because then I don't know why it's flickering. But oh man, what happened? We stopped the share for a second.
You can just put it up in the corner.
Yeah, but it's still flickering. I don't know what is going on.
It may stop if it's up in the corner.
Okay. Okay, now that we have full screen, it stopped. Okay. So, yes. So we're going to look both at text and hear music. We're not up to the part that has music yet. The first 11 chapters of Genesis that we've looked at somewhat can very much be thought of as a divine damage control. Okay? God tries to create partners, tries to create people to have a relationship with, but they're not very interested in a relationship with God. They're not interested in the relationship being healthy. Right from the beginning, right, Adam and Eve, they sin in the Garden of Eden. And one of the things that gets cursed We're not going to deal with all of Adam's curses, but one of the things that gets cursed when after the sin of Adam and Eve is the ground. We sometimes forget that. We think the people were cursed, and they were, but it's also the ground, right? Arura ha'adama is what God says to Adam. The ground is cursed. The land is cursed. No longer will it grow exactly what you need, like in the Garden of Eden, but you're going to have to work and toil in order to get it to grow what you need. Okay? And then we have a murder. Cain murders, and we saw already how he becomes a wanderer. And he becomes a wanderer he becomes cursed as a wanderer. He gets the mark of Cain. It's a curse. Then we have the curse of the flood. The curse of the flood was as a result, apparently, of violence. That seems to be the meaning of the word Hamas in Genesis. And after all of these, Adam's curse and Cain's curse and the curse of the flood, all three of them end with some kind of divine, what's the word when like you're mad at somebody, okay, and you give it to them, but you step back and you don't like do it full thrust, because you have pity and you don't, what's a good word for that? I don't know if there is a word, but that's what God seems to do in all of these cases. Restraint, but that's more than restraint. It's more, but I love you, or I care for you. I just can't, go all the way, right? So that's what happens, first of all, with Adam and Eve. The expectation was that they die, right? So death was brought into the world, but he gives them, a life to live. They don't die immediately. And yes. What?
Pain and suffering.
All those things are true, but they do not simply drop dead. The human experiment doesn't end there. Okay? With Cain also, God has remorse. Cain says, this is too much. How can you punish me like this? And then God lessens the punishment. And then you have the curse of the flood. They're all supposed to die, but instead God rescues a family. And when God rescues the family, God remakes a covenant. Right? After the flood, there was a blessing to Adam and Eve. That blessing apparently came to its end with the flood. But God, he comes back again. He recreates a covenant with Noah. And then, of course, Noah messes up, okay? Gets drunk and various things happen, and that's not a good way to restart humanity, okay? And then we get to the next instance of divine displeasure, which is the Tower of Babel, okay? In the Tower of Babel, it's interesting, and here we should already begin to look at the text, okay? Excuse me. And this is Genesis 12, so we'll go up to Genesis 11. And at the end of this story, God doesn't even talk to them. God doesn't engage in it, like with Cain, he engaged in conversation. With Adam, he engages in conversation. Right? To Noah, he speaks after the flood and blesses him. But here, nothing. Okay? He's displeased by what's going on with the Tower of Babel. Right? There's endless discussion about why he was displeased. That's not our issue right now. But one thing that he was clearly displeased about, even if there was more, is that he blessed Adam and Eve and he blessed Noah, Piru, Urvu, Umilu, et haaretz. Be fruitful and multiply and fill up the world. And that's exactly what the people in the Tower of Babel, right, were trying to prevent. What? That's exactly what the people in the Tower of Babel were trying to prevent. Look, Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. We will make ourselves a name. Look at this. Lest we disperse over the face of the earth.
They wanted to stay together.
They wanted to stay together. They did not want to disperse and fill up the earth. Okay? There's all kinds of things you can say about the Tower of Babel. We could probably take a year just doing that, right? But one clear thing which is relevant to us tonight is that filling up the earth is important, and that's not what they wanted to do. Okay? And what is God's response? He mixes up their languages so they won't understand one another's language. And he disperses them from there over the face of the earth because that was his will, apparently. That's what he wanted to happen. And therefore, as a consequence, they stopped building the city, right? But he doesn't talk to them. And he doesn't, have a discussion about the punishment and what's going to happen and is it too heavy or not. He doesn't even want to touch them. He just does what he does and that's it. Yeah.
There's not any one individual
Yeah.
to talk to that he wants to talk to.
He could have sent a prophet. Okay, that's how God usually talks in the Bible. This is just God looking. I don't like that. Does a little something, but there's no interaction at all.
And no explanation.
And also no explanation to the people, right? No explanation to the people. Not only, according to the story, the people didn't maybe even fully understand. And as a consequence, also today, the readers of the story, right, don't fully understand. And God, and it's like God couldn't care less, right? I've had enough with you, right? And I'm not explaining, okay? Before the business here, okay, you have the descendants of Noah's sons. These are the 70 nations of the world that I talked to you about, I mentioned to you at least last week, okay? All of these different places, yeah? All of these different places, 70 different nations. Guess who's missing? Yeah. Okay, this is, in the biblical way of looking at things, this is the world. This is humanity. This is like a political map of the world in these verses here. And guess who has nothing to do with the political map of humanity? The Jews, okay? Israel. And I'll just tell you a little bit about the translation. It says here at the bottom, translated and annotated by Neema Novetsky. What this website is doing, it's taking an old translation of the Tanakh, and she is making it both modern and very both accurate in a lot of ways and scholarly in a lot of ways. The footnotes on it are great, and it's a good thing to use if you want to look at Hebrew and English together for the Tanakh. You turn it on and off with this, right? This turns off the translation, and this turns on the translation. And the only thing I hate about it is it uses, in the translation, uses Hashem for the name of God, which I don't know. I just don't like doing that in English. But besides that, it's great. And maybe for people who like that, maybe that's great too. Okay, we'll go now down to Abraham. After the Tower of Babel, yeah, Gordon.
When you say it doesn't mention the Jews,
Yeah,
but there wasn't the Jews at that point.
right.
So they can't mention the Jews.
Okay, you can say, it's just, it's technical, right? We list the 70 nations of the world and, the Jews, they didn't start yet, okay? Tonight, I think we're going to see that it's a little more than that, okay? Give it a chance, okay? Remember, this is also literature, right? It's not data, okay? And what you're doing is you're presenting humanity with no place for Abraham and his descendants. They don't even figure among them. And then, and this, one second, and this comes right in lieu of the Tower of Babel. Okay, this is connected in the biblical text. This is directly, right? It follows the 70 nations, and it follows the descendants of Noah, and it leads straight into Abraham. It's kind of like Gordon. It's kind of like God is looking at this Tower of Babel, deals with it, looking at these 70 nations and saying, oh man, like he's tried so many times. He's done all this damage control for 20 generations. He's getting a little sick of it. Okay? And now he's going to try something else. So now we go to chapter 12. Okay? And here you see the Hashem translation. And now we will listen to some music. What I wanted to get was, there's a tune I really wanted to get for this passage, which some of you probably have heard, okay? And I couldn't find it anywhere. It looked all over YouTube and all over Google and whatever. I couldn't find it anywhere. Who remembers Safam? Yeah? This American Jewish group from Boston?
I have tapes of them.
Yeah, they did nice stuff back when. And they have a really, really beautiful tune for Lech Lecha. And I wanted to play it, but I couldn't find it anywhere. If anybody finds it, send it to me. So I selected different music, which is also very nice. And you can look now at Bereshit. I guess I can make it a little bigger like that. And you should hear the music momentarily. Oh, wait, I made a mistake, didn't I? I made a mistake. I have to stop share, if I can. Wait. I know what to do. Okay, we stop the share by force. Then we open up the browser again. Okay. We'll do this, and we'll do this, and I will go back to, I gotta go back. Oh, I did a little more than I done. And you'll see oh good, I'm still signed in. So here's Abraham, our father. And we'll open the, I keep making the same mistake. I have to open the share. I have to open the share selecting, selecting video. This is what I wanted. Optimize for video clip. No, yeah. All right, hopefully now it's optimized for video clip. Let's try this again. I apologize for the technical difficulties. And if it's optimized for video strip, we'll be able to hear the music. Okay. No, yada. Still loading. Oh, come on. No. Okay. And YouTube has ads, so bear with. Okay, we're there. You can listen to the music and watch the text.
מבית אביך אל הארץ אשר אראך כל הארץ אשר אתה רואה לך לך ולזרעך עד עולם כי את כל הארץ אשר אתה רואה לך ולזרעך עד עולם.
The last verse is, because all the land that you see, I give to you and your descendants forever. Okay, I guess that's sufficient. A lot of people like to sing about this. There's a lot of things about it that can inspire various kinds of songs. Do you focus on the Lech Lecha, on the wandering, on leaving your home? That produces one kind of a melody. Do you focus on, because I'm giving this land to you and to your descendants, which could inspire a different kind of melody? Maybe this kind of melody. These verses are very, very central both to Jews and to Christians. Okay, tonight we're going to focus more on the Jewish side, specifically because maybe this is biased, but I think it better reflects or is closer to the plain sense of the biblical verses. And the Christian side we will also meet. But these are very, very difficult verses, even though the words are easy. And there's a lot to deal with in them. Okay? Vayomer Adonai el Avram, Hashem said to Avram, Lech lecha, go forth, but maybe go for yourself, for your own good. Me'artzecha u'mimoladetecha u'mibeit avicha, from your land and from your family and from your father's house. El haaretz asher ar'eka, to the land that I will show you, and at this moment the land is mysterious. Abraham isn't told what land he's going to go to. The vav here implies a consequence. If you do this, right, the consequence will be, and this consequence is extraordinarily meaningful and controversial. Okay, I'm going to color it for you. Okay, ve'escha legoy gadol. What am I going to make out of you? Yeah, first of all, you should have said, I'm going to turn you into a goy. Right? That's what that could be a literal translation of those words. But of course, goy is not meant to, not what goy meant. What is a goy? Goy is a nation, like a couple of you were correctly saying. And you're nodding your heads, and this is obvious, and we all know this, like who cares? But it means so much. I'll give you an example of how much it means, okay? There is a new academic journal called Religia. What in Hebrew? What is Religia? Religion, okay? What is this new academic journal? This is a new academic journal for Israelis that tries to deal with religious thought in the state of Israel. Okay? All right, there's academic journals on everything, so we can have an academic journal on that. But that's actually a very problematic topic for an academic journal in Israel. You know why? Not because religion is controversial in Israel. That's not the reason. The reason is that when Jews, okay, that's the word I'm looking for, when Jews set up a journal to talk about religion, the statement seems to be that the Jews are a religion, or there is something called Judaism, which is a religion. Okay? So, but they're very open-minded in this journal. And they invited a fantastic thinker and speaker. Maybe some of you have heard of him, Rav Uri Sharkey.
My son.
Your son loves him?
He listens to all the shiurim.
He listens to all the shiurim, Rav Uri Sharkey. Okay. So they invited Rav Uri Sharkey to, maybe it was to write an article or maybe it was to do an interview for this journal. Okay. And what does Rav Uri Sharkey, of course, say? What is this business of a journal on religion, right? The Jews are not a religion. There ain't nothing to talk about, okay? And one of the things that Rav Uri Sharkey likes to say is this blessing to Abraham. He says that there are many, many, many observant Jews in Israel who would like to do something sacrilegious. You know what they'd like to do? They would like to edit and censor the Tanakh. You know what they'd like to do in this verse? What an awful verse this is. What do all the datiim, the religious people, think when they read Ve'escha legoy gadol? According to them, Rav Uri Sharkey says, it should say, they wanted to say Ve'escha ledat gdola. Dat gdola. I'll make you a big religion. But unfortunately, for them, that's not what the verse says. God does not say to Abraham, Ve'escha ledat gdola. He says to Abraham, Ve'escha legoy gadol. I will make you a great nation.
Yeah, but so I have a thing rolling around in my head now. When did we start to view religion as a separate entity from nations? Because the Roman Empire had its gods, the Greek Empire had its gods, the Canaanites had theirs. So when did religion become something separate from nations?
So are you asking for the Jews or are you asking in general?
In general.
Okay. Jenny is asking, when did religion become a separate concept from peoplehood or nationhood or something like that? And probably the best date to give is 1789. Right? What's 1789? Égalité, fraternité, the French Revolution. Okay? What?
That began the age of, yeah, the age of enlightenment.
It began in the age of enlightenment. Yeah. And what does enlightenment have to do with it? It also, you say the age of enlightenment, which is very, very true. But along with the age of enlightenment becomes a new political reality, which is called emancipation. Okay? Emancipation means that you have a nation state with citizenship. Okay? And citizens are equal under the law. And it doesn't matter what house of worship they go to. Right? The house of worship or God or all of that stuff becomes divorced from the state. Okay, that's precisely why, this is probably review for you, for all of you, but it's precisely why in December of 1789, in the new French Assembly, all of these new French parliamentarians, after getting rid of all the monarchy, they had nothing better to talk about than the Jews. What do we do with the Jews? Can you give citizenship to Jews? Well, that depends. Are the Jews a people or are they a religion? Okay. And almost overnight, all of the Jews of France said, we're a religion. Give us citizenship. Okay? So, that is not what God says to Abraham. Yeah, Mary.
The point is that he gives them a land. I'll show you a land for you. Religion doesn't imply a land.
Religion, at least in the Christian sense, does not imply a land. It doesn't matter where you live, what language you speak, what your culture is. If you accept Jesus, then you're a Christian. Okay? And here, I guess you're right, Barry. Instead of coloring the end of the line, I should have colored the entire line, right? It's a land And it's a nation. Escha el haaretz asher arecha. You're going to need a land if I'm going to make you a nation. Okay? All right. So for the Jews, that's a very good line. Okay? Because the church is claiming what you're saying. The church is saying, God, he wants believers. He doesn't want any specific nation. And he doesn't want to have anything to do with Israel in the flesh, which is a nation that you get born into, right? Fleshy wise. And what? Okay. I don't know. Somehow that term came out. So Israel in the flesh. That's the what the classic Christians call us. So this line is good for the Jews, right? To the land that I will show you, and I will make you a people. He doesn't say I'll make you a great religion. He says I'll make you a great people. And then he doesn't talk about the people in general. He starts referring specifically to Abraham. You, Abraham, avarechecha. What is avarechecha? So it's translated here, I will bless you. Okay, that's a pretty simple translation. It may not help us too much because what does I will bless you mean? What does it mean to bless somebody? That's a good question. All right. What does it mean for God, in this case, God to bless a human being? And then you could further ask afterwards, what does it mean for one human being to bless another human being? But that's the, you say what? Like the custom to bless your children on Friday nights. What does it mean? But it begins here with God. What does it mean for God to bless a human being? Okay.
Special,
Mm-hmm.
makes him special.
Makes him special. Do you need to be special to be blessed?
He doesn't imply that you become a people and reproduce and unless you become a people when you have many progeny and
Yeah.
land and
You have many progeny. I think the key word there is many. Okay. Bracha in biblical Hebrew has to do with ribui, has to do with muchness, with growth, with multiplication. Okay. And the usual word that the way that barech is used, especially when God blesses people, is that God will give you a lot of good things. You can be blessed with, to bless you with children means that you'll have a lot of children. To bless you with wealth means that you'll be very, very, very rich. Yes? You all with me? To bless you with years means that you'll have lots of years, a very, very long life. Okay? To have lots and lots and lots and lots of good. But it's especially used with the issues of wealth and the issues of children. Okay, so I will bless you, Abraham. This is the first place in the Hebrew Bible, in the Torah for sure, okay, where God blesses somebody. Okay, he doesn't bless, well, he does, no, excuse me, that's not correct. He initially does bless Adam and Eve. Okay, but then what happens? They're cursed. If we, go back to what we did, go back to what we did before. They're cursed, and the land also is cursed. And look what's happening with Abraham. Abraham is going to be blessed, and he's going to be blessed even with a land. Okay, that comes up in many of the blessings of God to Abraham. You can see it as a reverse of what happened to Adam and Eve. Okay? Until now, the blessing has been wasted, or the blessing has been left behind, and there have been curses. And now God is trying to restore, okay, the initial blessing, and even to give a land as part of the blessing, even though land has been cursed. And then there's another good one here, that's the next thing in the verse here, Va'agadila shemecha, which is translated here as I will make your name great, okay? I don't know exactly yet what make your name great means, but you know what I do know? If we go back one chapter, just one chapter, and we look at the Tower of Babel, what do we see? They say, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and we will make for ourselves a name. And God disapproves of all of this. But now God has someone whom God wants to give a great name to. Okay, in other words, you can see Abraham and these blessings becoming the reverse of all the stuff that was happening before. We still don't know what it means to make a name great, but at least we got that. Okay. Another thing it says here at the end of the verse is Vehye bracha, which is literally translated here as, and you shall be a blessing. That's also a difficult phrase. Okay. Then it says, Va'avarecha mevarechecha. I will bless those who bless you. Kalilcha aor. I will curse those who curse you. We've been asking, what does it mean to bless somebody? We also need to ask, what does it mean to curse somebody? And then we get, this also needs to be colored. Oof. Okay. V'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpechot ha'adama. And according to the translation here, okay, all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Okay, vicha is translated here as through you. Maybe it could be by you. Maybe you could have some other sense. You got to choose one sense or another when you translate. But this verse, or this part of this verse, you know, it takes a much bigger perspective. Okay, before we had Abraham, and Abraham's going to be blessed, and Abraham's going to get a land, and that's all good and fine for Abraham. But what about the rest of the world? Has God abandoned the rest of the world? Does God not now care about the rest of the world? I'm not asking this rhetorically. Maybe he doesn't care anymore. He's just focusing on Abraham. Or maybe he's using Abraham as a means to relate to the rest of the world or do good for the rest of the world. Here you have others. We have others outside of Abraham who are blessing him or who are cursing him. And all the families of the earth have something to do, at least, with this blessing. Yeah.
The first question that came to me, but maybe it's answered.
Yeah.
Is all the families of the earth, all of those 70 nations from the Tower of Babel? Or is it all of these great people that will come from Abraham and therefore blessed?
No. I think the first one is clear.
Okay.
Kol mishpechot ha'adama. All the families of this. It's almost surely referring back to the list of all the families in the earth, which is just a chapter before. Okay? But these verses aren't isolated. They're part of a narrative. And you can also imagine that the people who are telling these verses and the people who are hearing these verses, they know it all by heart, and they remember what came just before, and they know what comes just afterwards. So Abram went as Hashem had spoken to him, and Lot went with him, right? The only member of his family who accompanies him. And Avram was 75 years old when he left Haran, right? We don't know what he was like in his youth, if that has anything to do with God choosing him. He takes his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot and all their possessions which they had acquired, meaning he already has some wealth. And the people they had purchased in Haran, Okay, he's a wealthy man with servants. And they departed to slaves. Slaves. Servants works for that too. Just sounds nicer. Okay. And they departed to go to the land of Canaan because, God says, the land I will show you. But he doesn't tell Abraham which way to go. So Abraham just continues going the way that the family was going anyways, because Terach was on his way to Canaan. And they came to the land of Canaan. So Abraham passed through the land to the site of Shechem, to Elon Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. This is already the first disappointment. Okay? Abraham is promised a land, so he comes to the land. And then it emphasizes here, why does it have to say the Canaanites were then in the land? It emphasizes it to show that how can this be my land if all these other peoples are living here? And precisely at that moment, when the Canaanites are all there, Hashem appeared to Avram and said, I will give this land to your offspring. Despite what you see around you, your offspring at least will inherit this land. And then he builds an altar to this God who appeared to him. And he goes here and he goes there and he builds altars and he calls in the name of this God. And then he continues to travel, but then there's a famine. He goes down to Egypt and the story continues in other ways. Okay? At the end of the story, when he comes back from Egypt, we already talked about this story. At the end of the story, he comes back from, whoops, I pressed the wrong thing again. Oh, die. At the end of this, he comes back from Egypt. He ascended from Egypt, and he was very, very wealthy. He left Egypt a very, very wealthy man. And then, as you can see, there's another disappointment, okay, between him and Lot. There's not enough room. And after this, Hashem said to Avram, after Lot had separated, Abraham now loses part of the land to Lot. God makes nice promises, but look what happens in reality. So after yet another disappointment, Hashem says to Avram, now lift your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. Right? It's a fana v'negma v'kedma v'yama. Because all the land you see, which you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. That's what the melody was singing earlier. Right? So the melody is singing the promise of the land before the disappointments, and then the promise of the land after the disappointments. Okay? And look how big it gets with the offspring. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth. If a man can count the dust of the earth, so may your offspring be counted. Wow. Arise, walk through the land to its length and to its breadth, because I will give it to you. Tour the whole place, go everywhere. This is your land. So that's what Abraham goes and does, right? He goes and he dwells and he builds an altar. But immediately after this, once again, it's going to state that the Canaanites are in the land, right? It doesn't seem realistic, or at least it doesn't seem immediate in any way. So we go back to chapter 12, okay? And I'm just a little bit sad that it lost the yellow marking, but it's not the end of the world. And what we'll do now is you can, on this website, you see these? Right now we're looking at it single frame. Single frame, you just see one thing, namely the verses, okay? And you can see the verses with translation or without translation. You could also do it this way, and you can see the verses next to a commentary, and you can select which commentary. There's dozens and dozens, and you'll see what I'm going to select in a moment. But before that, you can also view the translation even within this mode. Okay, I'm going to select a commentary which I believe on this website does have a translation, a commentary which is familiar to all of you, which in my opinion does a good job in this case of explaining this plain sense of the text even to modern ears, even though it's not a modern commentary. but it makes sense of the text for modern ears. And yet, it also reflects something of the problems of the Middle Ages. The commentary I'm going to select is, of course, Rashi. Rashi is the most basic thing to look at for Lech Lecha, because for the past 900 years, when Jews hear Lech Lecha, they also hear Rashi. And also because Rashi is very sensitive in this case to the plain sense of the biblical text. Now notice for Rashi here, there's also translation. And it's a good translation, even though the language is a tiny bit archaic. Excuse me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nihya b'dvaro.
Can we move the screen over?
Ah, yes. There you go. Okay. Okay. Now what? Let me make this a little bit bigger. You can see a little bit more. Okay. Lech Lecha. The Lecha here is not just a little word that's added for no reason. Okay. God is urging Abraham on. Okay. Do this for yourself. This will be good for you. And Abraham is somebody who really needs to look out for what's good for him, because he, as we've seen so far already, right? Unlike the rest of humanity, he's in a very bad situation, right? His father is dead, his brother is dead, he's in exile, he's a wanderer, and his wife is barren. And all of that is the exact opposite to what Genesis describes for the rest of humanity. So if you want Abraham hana'ah, if you want benefit, or if you, Abraham, want tovah, if you want good, then go, okay? For your own benefit, for your own good, okay? And then he says, Escha legoy, okay? Rashi quotes this. Rashi knows that Israel for the Christians is not a goy, not a nation, okay? And he also knows that Abraham is specifically the kind of person who can never become a goy. Why? Obviously, because his wife is barren, okay? And so Rashi says, V'chan iyata zocheh lebanim. Here you will not have children. In other words, having children is a result of listening to me. If you listen to me and you go, then you will have children despite your barren wife. But if you don't listen to me and you stay here, you will not have children. Okay? You are the kind of person, you are in the kind of situation where there will be no children unless God gives you this blessing. Okay? And then he says, Ve'escha legoy gadol. Okay, and Rashi says something here that's a very perceptive in terms of reality. Escha legoy gadol. Goy gadol means a big nation, which means having lots and lots of descendants, right? Avarechecha, it could mean children, and it often means children, but it mostly means, in the majority of contexts, wealth. Okay? And finally, agadil shemecha. What does it mean to make a great name? So I contrasted it to the Tower of Babel. They also wanted some kind of name, but we still don't know what it means. What does it mean to make a great name for someone? Okay? It's become famous, right? You're going to make a name for you, right? You know, the representative of the movie star or something like that. What?
Years later, we're still talking.
Yeah, 4,000 later, we're talking about Abraham. So this blessing came through big time, huh? All right. Well, Rashi explains it in a way that's extremely, extremely realistic. Okay, Rashi is not always the most realistic commentator, and he's sometimes criticized for not being sufficiently realistic. But in this case, he's powerfully realistic. He says, "Lefisha derech migaremet l'shlosha dvarim." Abraham is being told to go. What happens when you go, when you travel, even today, but all the more so in previous times. Take them one at a time.
After you gain experience.
What? You gain experience. Well, that's you're talking about the nice side of it. You gain experience, see the world, become worldly. Fine, but look. Eschad ligoy gadol. I will make you a great nation. That means lots of descendants. Well, travel, especially before modern times, was extremely rigorous physically, and one of the consequences of that was that if a family is traveling, there's going to be less intimacy, and it's very, very hard to have children safely and successfully if you are traveling.
And you can't stop at Howard Johnson's.
You can't stop at Howard Johnson's. Okay, so think about it. This blessing, he's telling Abraham, first of all, go. That's what you have to do. And even though going usually causes damage in 3 ways, instead, I'm going to bless you in those 3 ways. Your going will not be damage, rather your going will be blessing. The first one is children, which is usually impacted by going. The second is va'avarechecha, which Rashi takes very, very sensibly to mean wealth. Well, one thing traveling does is it eats up your savings. Even today, right? It costs a lot of money to travel. And when you travel, you usually end up poorer right after the trip than you were before the trip. Nowadays, we just measure that in our bank account. Was this before I left? After I took a trip, and now it's less after I take a trip, right? But here we're talking about something more, even more substantial. Yeah.
Very tangible. Wealth
Yeah.
is measured in land. You leave your land.
Huh? You leave your land, you can't take it with you, so you're automatically more poor if you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but shepherds measure their wealth in their livestock.
Shepherds measure their wealth in their livestock,
And the
but-
livestock went with them.
but the shepherds are, first of all, are not always going in the sense that Abraham is. They don't go all over the world, right?
You have no
And-
idea what kind of pasture land he's going to.
For sure. And look, he doesn't find enough pasture land. In any case, this business of traveling, wandering, diminutating, is that how you say it? Diminishing your wealth, okay? And then finally, I think every one of us has felt this, right? We're all immigrants to Israel in this room, right? Whenever you're an immigrant, okay, it's always more difficult because of this issue of va'agadila shemecha, and I will make your name great. When you're an immigrant, when you've traveled, when you've come from another place, your name is always less. Okay? Where I came from, there are so many people who knew me. I'm talking about myself, really, any of us. So many people who knew me, and so many people who I could contact. And so many, places to turn to, right? And then when you're an immigrant, nobody knows who you are, right?
Nobody cares.
Maybe nobody cares, okay? And your name is diminished when you go. So what does God say to Abram? He says, first of all, I'll make you a great nation, meaning despite going, you'll have children. Secondly, avarechecha, despite going, your wealth will actually increase. Imagine going on vacation and coming back with more money than you had to begin with. What a great idea. What? Say what?
Well, except
He's not going on vacation, of course, but still, after the vacation, having more money than you began with. And I'm not just saying that, stop. I'm saying that because that's exactly what the story says. He comes into Canaan with all of the wealth that he acquired and all of these servants or slaves that he bought, meaning he came into Canaan wealthier than when he left. Somehow he managed to acquire wealth on the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you consider him the first nomad?
Would I consider him?
implies that you're going to do all those things on the way.
Marion is saying that a nomadic existence implies that you're going to be successful in all of those ways on the way. And yet, if you consider nomads, how many of them,
They're not wealthy,
yeah, how many of them become wealthy and,
but they do have children.
they do have children, but how many of them become, huge populations?
But
Right.
nomads travel in an area. that
Yeah,
they can
Elisheva says they
totally-
keep to a certain area
He's
anyways.
going to totally new places. He doesn't know whether there's pasture land
Right.
at all.
New places for Abraham.
But that
So-
was one of the adventures, like Marco Polo. He went out to
Yeah.
his
He's not
way in the
Marco
world and
Polo.
what else.
So maybe Marco Polo managed, okay? Maybe he had God's blessing too, all right? But in general, wanderers do not end up this way. And so God is saying, even though going diminishes these three things, your going will increase them, okay? Mema'etet pirya urvia, which is to have offspring. Mema'etet et hamamon, it decreases wealth. Mema'etet et hashem, and you lose your name is diminished when you go to a new place. And that is why Rashi says that Abraham needed these three blessings, okay? Because God is telling him to go, he specifically needs to be blessed in these three ways. Okay, and then Rashi indeed says that avarechecha means money, means wealth. And now the coolest part is this. What does it mean, veheye biracha? And which literally is, you shall be a blessing. What does it mean to be a blessing? All of the commentators have to find some way to explain this. And Rashi explains it in a way which does two things. First of all, it's a convincing explanation of the verse. Down to this day, there's all kinds of commentators and scholars who just automatically understand the verse this way. And secondly, it also has a little bit of something to do with the Jewish argument with the Christians. Okay, let's see what he says. And you will be a blessing. What does that mean? Habrachot netunot biyadecha. The blessings are put into your hand. Ad achshav hayu biyadi. Until now, says God, blessing was in my hand. I am the one who gave blessing. Me'achshav ata mivarech et asher tachpotz. But now I'm giving you this ability or this power to bless whomever you choose. Okay, so according to this first explanation of Rashi, God is giving Abraham some kind of divine power. He can bless people like God blesses people. If God can increase Abraham's name and wealth and offspring, then Abraham can now bless other people with those same things, just like God does. Okay, that's very, very powerful. It also makes the Jews very powerful, right? Everybody better be nice to the Jews, right? Because if you're nice to the Jews, it pays off, right? They'll bless you. You want to get blessed by those Jews, all right?
We're always up and down with that one.
Say what?
We're always up and down.
We're always up and down with that one. I think someone just rang to come in. I don't believe it. It's like late. Okay, to let this, who is there? Hello?
It's me, Hannah.
Oh, it's Hannah. Hi, Hannah. Who let you in? I guess Don. Okay, good to see you or hear you. Okay, but Rashi offers yet another explanation. Okay, and when Rashi offers more than one explanation, it's often good to think about why there might be a need for more than one explanation. Does one of them not do enough justice to the verse? Or is there another reason? Sometimes, by the way, the second explanation is not Rashi. It could be somebody else who added a second explanation after Rashi into the manuscript. That also happens. and yet the question doesn't go away, right? Why was Rashi's explanation not sufficient for the person who added in a second explanation? Let's assume that Rashi wrote this, okay? And he gives this explanation, which is the more famous explanation. Escha legoy gadol, okay? I will make you a great nation. Zeh shomrim Elohei Avraham. This is actually what you said earlier, Elisheva, that to this day, the whole world is talking about Abraham. What does it mean that I'll make you a great nation? That everybody will talk about the God of Abraham. Okay? A great nation means that everybody's talking about the nation of whom this is their God. Va'avarechecha, and I will bless you. But let's go down here. No, let's skip down to here. 1 second. Where did it go? 1 second. The problem is that the here it is. This is the main one. That part with the nivrechu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama. Okay, all of the peoples of the world will be blessed in you. And when we looked at that, we raised the question, right? Is it that God is concerned with the other nations still? You know, he's going to use Abraham as an agent? Or has God, given up on the other peoples and the real person at the center here now is Abraham? Look how Rashi does it. And then you'll answer that question, according to Rashi. V'nivrechu v'cha. Yesh agadot rabot, says Rashi. There's all kinds of legends and stories in Midrash about this. V'zeh pshuto. But this is the plain sense of the text. He knows that there's Midrash, but he wants to give you the plain sense of the text. Adam omer livno tehe ke'Avram. A man will say to his son, may you become like Abraham. Okay? To be blessed in your name is that people will actually use your name in blessings. Okay? If you see somebody really successful, then you say to your child, may you become like that person. Okay? And I don't know if you're I don't know who's a soccer star or something. I don't know, Mickey Mantle, okay? So if you're playing baseball with your child, and you'll say, may you hit like Mickey Mantle or something like that. Okay? So Abraham is the Mickey Mantle of the blessings of the nation. So, sorry that I don't have any British examples of this, or I don't know. What?
One thing,
Yeah.
when we pray, when we say all our blessings,
Yeah.
we always say, blessed are you, Adonai.
Yeah.
We're blessing God.
Yeah. Yeah. You're asking a fantastic question. Marion is asking, she's asking this. If to bless means to cause someone to increase in good things, right? God blesses us, then that means we're going to be wealthy and have long lives and children and everything, okay, and healthy, okay? But in the Bible and in the prayers, you also have the idea to bless God, Baruch Atah, right? When the person says that, the person is blessing God. What does Baruch mean when a person turns to God? So Moshe Greenberg, who analyzed this question, anybody remember him? No. A conservative rabbi who became the scholar of Bible. What?
Of course. Yes.
Chana remembers Rabbi Professor Moshe Greenberg. He made Aliyah, and he became the greatest professor of Bible in his time at the Hebrew University. Are you raising your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, so Moshe Greenberg, he has a really, really nice essay on biblical prayer. And he says that, historically you could theorize, okay? You could theorize that, maybe in pagan Mesopotamia, it wasn't just God that blessed people, it was also people that blessed God. You'd bring your offerings, right? And then that would increase the God. Okay? So maybe the root of the meaning of the word goes back to pagan Mesopotamia. But regardless of whether that theory is correct, whether it is or whether it isn't, what is clear is that in the Bible itself, Barech takes on a different meaning regarding God. Barech, whenever it's used towards God, becomes a synonym of Hallel, to praise. Okay? And you can think of it that you're praising God, not that you're blessing God, you're not increasing God, you're not empowering God. Rather, God empowers. And so if you say Barech, you're saying that you are the source of blessing, or you are the cause of blessing, or you are the blesser. Okay? But there is, linguistically a bit of like it's going in two different directions. Yeah.
It's an adjective and a pronoun.
It's
You
an
are
adjective
blessed.
and a pronoun. Okay.
You are
Yeah.
blessed. I've
Yeah.
always thought of it not as us blessing God,
Yeah.
but of recognizing that God is blessed
Yeah.
and in turn is the source of blessing.
But what does it mean to say that God is blessed? That's the problem. Okay. So Moshe Greenberg, yeah.
This kind of spells out how we're interpreting to be blessed to mean.
Yeah.
But if I'm a rich person and I give lots of wealth around to people,
Yeah.
I'm enriching them, but am I blessing them?
Okay.
So blessing involves something more than.
Okay. Elisheva, Hannah.
Clear what that is.
Elisheva is saying that blessing involves more than just giving. If I pass out my money to people, I'm enriching them, but I'm not blessing them. I'm not quite sure that that's true. In other words, the biblical barech maybe could be used like that. Okay.
I mean, I
In
think
any
of
case,
the old program, The Millionaire, where they would give people
Yeah.
$1 million and then see what they did. It was a curse more often.
sometimes getting wealth can be a curse. Okay. Okay. In any case,
It's always intrigued me
yeah.
that the word there is me.
Is me.
Right, berech is ni, so it has to do with subservience. Okay, that also might connect with Abraham. I never thought of that. Might connect with Abraham. Abraham, who is the most obedient character ever, right? So maybe the barech also has. That's very interesting. Maybe the barech sort of like hints at that sense too. In any case, Rashi says that the plain sense of the verse is very, very plain. Okay? People will use your name in blessings. Okay? We do that in the example that you brought up earlier, right? The blessing for children on a Friday night, which is Birkat Kohanim, or the way the Kohanim bless the people of Israel. You see, Mecha Elohim Kefraim V'chim Nashe, as Rashi is about to mention. Okay? Since Ephraim and Menashe were very successful tribes, that's what you say to your children. May you become like Ephraim and Menashe. Okay? And Rashi says, V'chein kol v'nivrechu v'cha sheba mikra. Throughout the entire Bible, including that example, it's always used in this sense. Okay? You will be a blessing means your name will be used in blessings. Shalom, Ken. Ken.
יש לנו היום פה מפגש,
כן.
ולי נאמר על ידי אימן שכאילו עד אחרי פסח, כאילו, זה יהיה להתפלל בשעות האלה.
אוקיי, ככל שאני יודע, יש לו"ז שם בחוץ, עם כל שבוע. מתי אתם מתחילים?
אנחנו מתחילים ב8:15, אבל העניין הוא שהיום אנחנו מארחים עוד אנשים מבחוץ, מגיעים עוד שחקני דלת.
אוקיי.
מכל הצפון, ואני ממש כאילו...
אז בואו נעשה ככה, אנחנו נסיים ב8:15, אז נסיים ב8, בסדר? ונארגן? בסדר. Okay, bivakasha. Beseder. So yes, so Rashi does a very, a very scholarly kind of thing here, right? You go through the entire Bible and you see that this phrase is always used in the same way, to use someone's name as a blessing, okay? And you can also see this happening in the Abraham stories. Abraham comes and he becomes very, very famous, and he's known as a wealthy person. He becomes known as a powerful person. Okay, his name is increased even though he's come to a new land. Okay, now why do I say that this has something to do with the church? Okay, v'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama. I'll once again put this in yellow. Okay, Rashi says, you know what it means? It means that all the peoples of the earth will use your name, but when they bless their children, because they know that how successful you are and how great you are, etc. Okay? I don't think it's just the plain meaning of the verse. It is the plain meaning of the verse. But it may be that Rashi is choosing here the plain meaning of the verse rather than the Midrashim, because it's an effective anti-Christian argument. Okay? What would the Christian way to look at these 5 words be? V'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama. All the people, what?
That you will be an example, and that all people in the world, you will be part of the blessing for all people in the world.
Okay, first of all, Chana is saying that God is still concerned with all peoples, not just with Abraham and his offspring. That's number one. God is still concerned with all the people in the world, but it's even more than that. It's also v'nivrechu v'cha, and will be blessed through you, all the peoples of the world, meaning that your role is not for any one people. Your role is for all peoples. If somebody could close the door. Thanks. Your role is for all peoples. And that is, these are all elements, clearly elements, in the Christian view of Abraham. Okay? Now, when Rashi comes along and says that the plain biblical use of this phrase is simply to say that people will use your name and blessings. So it, okay. סיכמנו שמסק... We just... סיכמנו איתו שנסיים ב8. דיברת איתו? הסמוקתם? אוקיי, בסדר. אוקיי. בסדר. אוקיי, so this is above all of our heads, I think. Okay. God is concerned with humanity. Abraham's role is for all of humanity. And here's the most important thing. All of humanity has a share in Abraham's blessing, not just his offspring. Now, when Rashi comes along and says that it simply means that people use your name to bless, that means that all the nations of the world know about Abraham, but, ultimately,
he's not theirs.
Yeah, he's not theirs. They like their children to be like him, but he's not theirs. And his blessing is not theirs. Okay, his blessing is only for his offspring. Okay, so it could be that Rashi is motivated by more than just the text when he chooses this basic interpretation and gets rid of and leaves aside the midrash. Okay. All right. So we have lots and lots and lots of blessing here. And the blessing is the complete opposite, okay, of all of the cursing stuff, right? All of the disappointments and all of the damage control and all of the mitigating the consequences and wiping out humanity but saving humanity and punishing people but lessening their punishment, and all of that is put aside, and here you just have blessing, blessing, blessing. It's almost going back to the blessings initially to Adam and Eve. Okay, you can see all of this as God starting over again. Okay, but in a very, very different way. And also starting with someone who very much needs blessing in its usual senses, right? Because this person is different than everyone else and doesn't have the blessings that everyone else has. And it could be even just a matter of appreciation. Someone like Abraham knows how to appreciate blessing and knows how to be patient, very, very patient, as he awaits blessing. Whereas the other families of the earth are used to the blessing just coming. Okay.
I want to say something about you. What you said is starting the world over.
Yeah.
The first time is creating Yesh Mi'ayin.
Mm-hmm.
And this time it's creating Yesh Mi'yesh.
The people hear Chana? Chana says that first God creates the world from scratch, and now God's creating the world from something. Okay?
It's not scratch. It's Yesh Mi'ayin means that creation is a very different type of creation. It's just God can do that.
Yeah.
Yesh Mi'ayin is only God's ability to do. Yesh Mi'yesh is also people's ability to do.
Okay.
So that's a very interesting point that he chooses now for the second time to create Yesh Mi'yesh, which means he's giving people the ability to also create things themselves.
Okay. Chana is saying that the kind of creation that initially happens is something that only God can do. If God is starting anew with Abram, this is a kind of creation that Abram also can do. Okay? Now, take a look at this sheet here, okay, that we're seeing now. Are there other origins for the people of Israel? The story we just saw the beginning of very much has it, that the people of Israel are the offspring of Abraham and etc. And, the most familiar way of looking at it. But in the Bible, there are actually other ways of looking at the origin of Israel. And they may not even involve Abraham. If we look at Ezekiel, okay, you'll see that God is very, very upset with the Israelites, or in this case, I guess, with the Judeans, because he's prophesying to the exiles of Judah in Babylon. And he says, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations. She has to see who she is and how awful she is because she has been idolatrous. Right? Last year we had the course on idolatry in English. We even saw this, I believe. So thus says the Lord God unto Jerusalem, your origin and your nativity is of the Canaanites. Doesn't even say the land of, I don't think, right? Okay. It is Me'eretz HaKenani, of the land of the Canaanite. The Amorite was your father, and your mother was the Hittites. What is Abraham? Where's he from? Ur Kasdim. And as for thy nativity, in the day you were born, your navel was not cut. You were not washed for cleansing. You were not salted. You were not swaddled. Guess they used to saw babies. No one pitied you to take care of you or anything like this. You were abandoned, okay, to nature. You should have died, right? An abandoned child, a baby child just born, usually dies. And yet, who stepped in? God stepped in. And I took care of you, and I cleaned you, and I clothed you. We won't read the whole thing. And I raised you. Now he's going at the Dalet. And I raised you, and eventually it turns out that this baby is now a young woman, and he marries her. Okay, and he is her whole life, and she becomes his whole life. And in here you also have the verse that we say in Passover, "B'damai chayi," you will live through your blood, because I saw you there abandoned as a baby, and I said to you that in your blood, even though you're bleeding like this, you will live. Okay, and it's interpreted as a metaphor for circumcision. So what happens is this. On the one hand, this does present different origins for the Israelites. Okay, it's telling a story of a young woman born of Canaanite parents who was abandoned and God took her. What might that apply about the history of Israel?
They were from an origin of the Canaanites.
Yeah, of Canaanite origin, and that's their connection to the land, not somebody who came from a distant place like Abram. Okay? On the other hand, even though these two stories are different in terms of origins, it may not really matter. The reason it may not really matter is because these two stories, despite their technical origin differences, they have some things very much in common. The first is the similarity, not in origin, who are your parents, but how did you begin? Both of them are stories of a severe break and a discontinuity. Usually children grow up with their parents, but this young girl, she was abandoned by her parents. She was raised by somebody else. She has some kind of genealogical connection to the Amorites and the Hittites, but it doesn't matter, because who brought her up? Who raised her? God. Okay? And what's with Abram? Abram has his root in Ur of Kasdim. Those are even his genealogical roots. He has ancestors there. He should have been part of that family. But what happened instead? There's a break and there's a discontinuity. There's a lech lecha, go. And he goes somewhere else where his name isn't known. And what builds him into a nation? God. He's not supposed to have children. His wife is barren, right? And this break in continuity, and then it's God who creates this new identity and this new kind of life. Okay? So despite the dissimilarities of origin, there's actually also some big similarities. And the last one is a different kind of people. Okay? Bevakasha. And the last one is a different kind of existence. All the other families of the world, okay? דון אמר לי שהוא דיבר איתך ואנחנו כרגיל. דון שנכנס עכשיו.
כן, רק שהוא לא דיבר איתי, אני לא יודע מה הוא הבין ממני. אז הוא כנראה...
אז בבקשה דבר איתו.
אני לא יודע איפה הוא, ואנשים הגיעו מרחוק ופה מחכים להיכנס, אני מצטער.
יש מקום בלובי שהם יכולים...
לחכות 2 דקות. אני 2 דקות מסיים, בואו, במקום להתווכח, בואו נסיים. בסדר. אוקיי. And okay, so a different kind of people, a people whose origins are not natural, so to speak, a people that doesn't come into existence and continue like other people's do naturally, right? Generation after generation, children, population growing, living in the same place. Okay, this one is different. This one is not just raised by God and created by God, but it's very coming into being is connected to God. And its existence is by virtue of God. It's God's blessing that makes Abraham into what he is. It's God's attention that lets this young woman grow up and live. Okay? And the nation exists by the attention to God. And finally, to come back to the very beginning, when Gordon asked, okay, you have the verse from Bilam, which because of the circumstances we won't look at, but a people that dwells alone and is not counted among the nations. Is not counted among the nations may be a metaphor, but maybe you could even take it literally. It is literally not counted among the nations. You have a count of 70 nations. And this people is not counted. And it dwells alone, meaning it dwells in a different way. Its existence is different than the existence of other nations. All right? And even though we normally think of God as being a religious idea, okay, here we have a nation which is dependent on God for its creation and for its continuing existence. And that makes it different than all the other peoples in the world. Okay? Well, I have to stop with this because I don't want any wars. All right, and it's Purim. We should all be happy, not warring. Purim Sameach, everybody.
Chag Purim Sameach, v'samachta.
V'samachta b'chagecha.
Okay.
And we got to stop the
Misha.
record.